Thank you for 3K. Now it's time for a giveaway. Make sure you check the description. Yay! Hi everyone, I'm so glad to see you here on the channel today. I'm Nikki, and today we're going to be looking at the new release from Simon Says Stamp. I have one stamp set from this. It's called Glistening Snowflakes, and it is a big 6x8 stamp. It's got lots of fun things, but we're going to look at making multiples. So if you just have one stamp set that can work as your Christmas or holiday cards, we can turn that into 5 different unique cards, and I'm going to show you how. So we're going to look at even using our scraps. We're going to use embellishments. We are going to do things like Foundry Wax. So lots of fun stuff for these cards, and I am going to time code the video so that each color card will have its own section, because I'm just going to make it as one long video. So when you're looking for it, if you want to see the pink card or something like that, you can go into the description of the video and you can click on the pink card and go and see what happens with it. So I just wanted you to know that ahead of time. We're going to do these 5 different colors. I just love this. It's kind of a Christmas rainbow, and we will get right into this video, but make sure that you hit the like and subscribe button if you have not done that yet on my channel. And have you entered the 3K giveaway? I'm finally hitting 3K on YouTube. I'm so excited. Please make sure I add you to the list and look in the description for how to enter the giveaway. Thank you so much. Let's get started. I am definitely going to use a positioning tool. So this is a MISTI, and it's a stamping tool that helps you keep the position of your cards. I'm going to line up my cards in the lower corner right here, and then we're going to stamp multiple, and we're going to stamp them all before we heat emboss them. So I'm using a tool that is a little powder brush to keep the static away so that it helps us emboss better. I feel like this works better before you put your magnets on, because if you put your magnets on and then you're dusting your tool on, you have that little area where the magnet was that does not get the anti-static powder on it. So when you are going to stamp this multiple times, so I'm going to use the thing that looks like a tree. It's a tree made out of snowflakes basically, and I'm going to use that because it takes up most of this 4.25 by 5.5 card, which is what's called an A2 card. So I've cut all of my pieces of paper to this. I do want to line it up correctly the first time, so I'm making sure my paper stays in the corner, and then I'm actually going to use a T ruler as well to make sure this is level on the bottom. So you'll see that I've got that out here. I'm going to go ahead and pick up my stamp, and you can look at your lines through your stamping tool as well to see if that will work. I also was seeing if it moved the paper. I'm going to move my magnets to different places and just make sure I can get a good stamp without it lifting the paper up. I do this a lot where I move the magnets around just to make sure. I'm also using my lines right here to make sure I've got it centered, and I'm using the line down at the bottom to make sure I have it level. If you can't figure this out or you don't want to use that, you can also use a T ruler. So T ruler will help you figure out that everything is level. It also helps me follow the lines on the outside of the MISTI. I have an older MISTI, so it's the lines aren't quite as dark as they used to be. So I'm just seeing if I've got this in the middle of my card, and I think I'm slightly off. So I'm going to peel it off and put it back where it needs to be. The other thing you see me doing is wiping this stamp off. This is the first time that I've used this stamp, and you can do this with your fingers. There are some different tools that are kind of like erasers that you could use to make sure that you get a good place there. I'm using this because I know this is the middle part of my card, and so I'm trying to get this right around the middle. And then like I said, I could use those other ones if I wanted to, but I'm just trying to use the grids that I have and using my ruler. So this may be, y'all may think this is a little excessive in lining things up, but symmetrical cards make a difference, and people can tell, your eye can tell if it's not symmetrical, if it's even just slightly off. So I usually am pretty careful with this, especially when I'm going to be doing multiples. Wouldn't it be terrible if I stamped 5 different of these and it was slightly irregular? Now granted, you could try to fix it different ways, but it's just going to take you more time. So why not get it right on the front end? with most stamp positioning tools, you just swing the door over and pick that up and everything stays where it's supposed to. So I'm looking at this bottom corner. I got one corner that's a little bit off based on the line, so I'm just adjusting that. And then now I'm going to add some Versamark ink, whatever you use to emboss. It can be colored ink, anything you want. I'm going to add that to the stamp, and then we're going to start stamping. I like to be sure I have great coverage with my embossing ink, so a lot of times I will stamp 2 or 3 times just to be safe and just to add a little extra ink to it. And then we're going to do all of these cards with the same embossing powder. I just think that makes it look more uniform, and if you were going to give these cards to someone as a gift, it would be really nice if they all matched that way. So I'm kind of creating this rainbow, but I'm going to keep my color of embossing powder the exact same. So we're going to be using gold embossing powder today, and you see how great that worked with the magnets. I don't see any spot there that's not covered with powder, but we'll know for sure when we start dumping this embossing powder on. So I'm using Ranger Gold, and it's the fine detail because these are little bitty snowflakes in areas. Some of them are just dots. So to me, the fine detail seems to catch all of these wonderful stamp details a little bit better. I usually use a coffee filter, and I pour my embossing powder on top, and then I'm going to tap this off. Once I do that, I still am going to look at this and see if I need to use a brush anywhere to remove any extra little bits of embossing powder. And you want to do this before you set it aside, because you will forget or something will happen and you'll accidentally heat it before you've gotten all those pieces off. So I look ahead, and then I'm going to set this aside to heat emboss with the rest of the colors. So let's go to our next color. We're going to do this bright green. With the tree over there, I didn't even wipe the stamp off. I left the Versamark ink on it, and all I've got to do now is put my piece of cardstock in the right place, use my powder brush on it, and then I can put my magnets back. I usually try to remember about where my magnets were, and I will add some more ink to it, but you don't have to worry about cleaning that stamp off in between if you're doing this pretty quickly. Okay, so stamping this one with the Versamark as well. I'm going to do it twice like I did with the other ones, and then we're going to add that same gold embossing powder. I've got the little paintbrush next to my stamping tool here. That blue paintbrush is just really fine paintbrush, but it is used only for removing embossing powder. So I keep that close, and I keep my little coffee filter here with lots of extra gold. And even though I'm doing 5 different cards, like I feel like to me the gold is a little low. I think I'm less than half of my bottle here. But it almost, I always say embossing powder is magic to me, because it seems like you don't use much at all. Like I can't even tell the difference in doing 5 cards and what was already in there. So I'm looking close to see. I do like to flick the back. That helps with these really detailed designs. I don't see any extra pieces on there, so I can set this aside and do the next color. With this dark green, I don't think I get enough powder on this piece, so I'm going to end up with some stray pieces of the embossing. So I'm going to show you how I remove those with this little paintbrush. And this happens sometimes even if you think you are getting enough powder. I just can tell from looking at that piece that I don't think I got enough powder on it, and that's probably why I end up with these little pieces that I need to remove. Now this is a super detailed design, so you're going to want a very fine paintbrush to remove it. You can still do your best to flick everything off, tap it, flick it from the back, everything you think you can to get all of those little extra pieces off, and still sometimes you'll have them. So I've got one over there where I'm touching with my finger. Here, I know this is hard to see, but if you got some good light, you'll be able to tell. And then I've got a few in the middle of my design. So I'm going to touch those, and it's not about wiping them away as much as it is. It's almost like the static releases them. If you just touch the piece, sometimes you pick it up or it'll just tap off all of a sudden, even though before it wasn't tapping off. I think it just has to do with the static energy that's right there. So for the navy one, you can tell how much powder I have on there. I have a ton, and I know that scares people when they're doing a dark cardstock, but I'm going to show you that it wipes off so easily. So don't be worried that you've created this, what you feel like is a mess of powder all over the front of your card. It will come off easily, and you'll be better off on your embossing if you allow that to get super powdery. It really makes it easier. Set all these aside and I'm going to heat emboss them at the same time, which is actually easier to me than sitting around and doing them at separate times, because your heat embossing tool is so warm, so it gets nice and hot, that you can do it really quick and get all of these done. So I'm going to heat emboss them, make sure I've got everything turning gold, and then I'm going to show you how I clean the powder off the paper. So the best thing that I've found for cleaning the powder off, and I know I didn't show you embossing every single one of these, but I figured that you got the idea. So we've got all these colors here, and some of them you can tell they have the powder on, some you can't, but I'm going to use a microfiber cloth. Now there's different ways to do this, but this has worked the best for me at not tearing up my paper and getting all of the powder off. So I know you're not going to tell as easily on the pink, but let me show you on these two dark colors. So especially the navy. I'm scrubbing it down, and you know, I've always worried, am I going to scrub off my embossing powder? But I have never done that, and I'm using a little bit of force to remove this, but I've never had any problem with dulling my heat embossing or anything like that. I don't. Tell me in the comments if you have. If for some reason mine seems to work great, if yours doesn't, tell me so I know. And I'm going to clean all these off, and then we're going to start doing our unique cards. Part of creating a lot of cards is you're going to need a lot of sentiments so that you can put something across these. This Spellbinders set, which I of course will include in the description, has warm wishes and Merry Christmas. It has other things, but they seem to fit across the tree in a really nice way. Merry Christmas is nice because it is kind of a triangle, and so it fits really well in the middle, but so does warm wishes. So we're going to use both of these, and I'm going to cut them out of multiple colors so that we have lots of options, and so that I can continue to make multiples with these. So you can see I went crazy with cutting them out. I cut them out of glittery paper. I cut them out of all the colors of cardstock. I did some gold, and just that gives me a lot of options. Maybe that seems wasteful to some, but I'm going to use these and I'm going to make lots of cards with them. So I went on and cut quite a few out, and I will have those for when I need them. Okay, I'm going to call this the light green card, and I'm also going to put on the time code Foundry Wax. So we are going to play with Foundry Wax. I'm so excited. I've only played with this a few times, and I just love the results it gets, especially when you're trying to do some quick, simple cards. This really adds a lot. I did shake this. You must shake it quite a bit. It even has a little ball inside that you shake it. You can use a brush. I use my finger because I want to make it almost like a gold. I'm kind of putting a lot on the edge, because when we heat this up, right now it just looks brown and slightly gold, but when you heat it up, it shines like your embossing powder. So I'm trying to create a little edge. I'm going to end up wiping some extra that's not from the edge, but I'm just trying to get it where it looks like an actual frame around this. So we're going to make it kind of thick on the outside, and then I'm going to go along and just kind of smush some of it towards the middle, and that's going to make more like a gold dust, I guess, or a dusting of the gold there. So I am working with basically one drop at a time because this dries so fast. So you do have to work quickly, which is one of those things that's hard for us perfectionists. We want to have some time, but you really do need to pick what you're doing. So I kind of picked the edges as my first part, and then I'm going to go back and spread a little bit on the rest. Okay, so here's how this looks up close. I'm going to try to get you an angle on how there's just a gold shimmer around the edges of this card. This is not heated yet. So once you add the heat, which I'm going to do in the next clip, you'll see that it turns a lot more bright, shiny gold. This is hard to see, but try to watch the edge that I'm heating. It will become shiny, whereas the one that I haven't heated yet is still kind of dull. Do you see how beautiful that is? Just love the effect. I think it could look great in a lot of different ways. I love using it as this outline because it really brings just a nice shimmer to the edge of your card. So once I heated this up, I did decide that there were a couple spots where I wanted to add more, and I went back and added on top of it and heated it again, and it did fine. So I decided that I wanted to be able to see that gold edge a little bit better, and so I put a backer. So this is just a little bit larger piece of cardstock, and I'm adding Rustic Wilderness to the edges to make it just slightly darker than the other one, so that hopefully that will stand out. To me, I can notice it a little bit better with it having something to back the card. So I like doing that. Now I'm going to add some more details. To finish off this card, I added Merry Christmas in navy. So remember, I cut all those different colors that kind of match my different cardstock. And so I've got it here. And then I also added a gold bow at the top. And I'm going to tie this to the very top. Not really tie it. I'm going to tie it and put it at the top of my tree like it's the tree topper. And it's just some gold thread from Altenew. So I'll make sure and list that for you. Here's the final for that green card. Look at how cool that Foundry Wax looks around those edges. Super fun. We'll get started on the navy card and we'll go from there. So for this card, I decided that I was going to use scraps. So I have this Altenew frame die that cuts out frames, and I keep all the extra frames that I don't use in this little stack because they're gold, and you don't want to waste any gold cardstock. That is always problematic. When I cut these out, I didn't put an adhesive backing on them, which I would highly recommend doing because it's very hard to get little bits of glue on this. The other thing about these super fine frames is it's hard to keep them level. So you need to be really careful that you're not pulling it out of its square shape. You can do things like cut an interior rectangle to try to keep this in place. I have not done that. I'm just trying to create quick, fast Christmas cards, and since I don't have that, I'm just going to do it the best way I know how, which is be very careful with my glue because I do not have any double-sided adhesive that would fit on the back of this teeny tiny frame. So I'm just going to go along, use the pen out of my Barely Art glue to clean up any messes, and I'm going to go down each side and just do a side at a time. And you can tell I'm going to have a little bit of navy at the bottom there that sticks out. That's okay. I'll just trim that off. This is also helpful that I have already cut this A2 card front exactly, and so this frame is made to fit on an A2, so you can see I'm off a little bit, but I've got level lines. I made sure to use a trimmer and create level lines, so if you've got a frame that's a little small like this, you're able to keep it level and even, knowing that you've cut your cardstock that way, so you can kind of follow along that. And is it perfect? Probably not, but it's close, and I can always trim the edges that kind of peek out at the other end. So I'm just using my pen from the Barely Art glue tip, that small tip. I'm using that pen and I'm moving things around, and I'm doing one side at a time. So we're down to just this last side that we need to adhere. So I'm going to add a little glue to it and adhere it. Now that I have my outside piece done, I'm going to trim the edges so that it matches up. No one will ever know you didn't have it exactly right, so just trim it off, get those extra little navy pieces, and I'm just going at an angle with my scissors so that I don't cut any part of the gold. Now I'm doing the inside square. So like I said, this die cuts out lots of different frames and different size frames. So I did that super thin one on the outside of the card, and now I'm doing one that's a little bit thicker. It might fit an 1/8 inch of your double-sided adhesive, but I wasn't completely sure that that wouldn't show, so I went on and did glue. Like I said, if I was doing this again, I would prepare ahead of time and make sure to put some double-sided adhesive on this before I die cut it. But this one is a lot easier to get in because you've already got a rectangle that you're working with, so it's a little easier to keep it even and level. And then once that's down, we need to put our sentiment on this card. So if you remember earlier in the video, I'd cut out a lot of these Merry Christmas and warm wishes, and so I'm going to use Merry Christmas, and I decided it needed to show up a little bit better, so I made my own outline of vellum. So I just cut around the sentiment after gluing it on vellum. Here's the final card. We're going to move on to the next card, which is the red one. I think this might be my favorite in this series. So I thought about putting just a red sentiment on there, but I really liked another heat embossed sentiment and just making a band around the card. Decided that I definitely needed to create some depth on this card, so I grabbed black soot. This is my favorite color for just adding that kind of highlight effect to the middle, especially on dark cardstock. So if you don't own black soot, which it was the last color that I added because I thought, what in the world do I need the black for? And now I use it all the time to create this highlight spotlight effect. So I definitely suggest trying it out. Put that on your Christmas list if you're making that out right now. And I promise you will not be disappointed on that one. Also added that little bit of detail on this strip as well because I felt like that made it stand out a little bit. So just adding that little bit of shadow, and it's not a ton. I really am just barely hitting the edges, but it really gives a great effect for the sentiment in the middle. And finally, for this card, I used these amazing embellishments. So these are from Trinity Stamps, and they're the brushed gold embellishments. Oh my goodness. I just love how they look. They look so good with this gold embossing. I thought maybe they wouldn't match or it would look strange, but I love it. And I just decided to use my embellishments to kind of outline the tree. So I didn't do any in the middle. I figured there was enough detail there with those snowflakes, but I used these to kind of just give the tree an outline, and I love how it turned out. So here it is. I'm going to show you the picture up close so you can see it, but I just love this one. I think it's just so bright and exciting. So it is definitely my favorite from this set. Next, we're going to move on to the dark green card, which is very similar to the red card, so we'll do it quickly. On this one, I'm going to use the black soot around the edges. Like I said, I love doing that on these really dark cardstocks. We're going to use a belly band like we did on the last card. It's going to be wider, and it's going to use the Spellbinders die cut sentiments. So instead of heat embossing, we're going to use glittery gold paper. Amazing. I love using some glittery gold with heat embossing and with other types of gold. And then we're going to do our same embellishments, but we're going to put them in the middle of the tree versus outlining the tree, so you can see the difference in those two. And on this one, I focused on the center of those snowflakes. They're so cute. I love using the centers. So I'm using those same kind of brushed gold. So we've got 3 different kinds of gold on this card, which is really, you would think wouldn't work, but it looks amazing. And here's the last card. This is, of course, not your traditional color of holiday cards, but I feel like, especially if you were given this package to someone, it just kind of makes all these colors come together. And so I did this kind of coral color, and I just found this piece of cardstock in my stash. I'm not even really sure where it's from. And then I'm going to add some abandoned coral to the outside edges. So instead of doing black soot, because this is such a light color, you need to get a color that coordinates with your cardstock. So this abandoned coral is slightly darker than my cardstock, which makes a great shadow effect. So for this one, I'm going to keep it pretty simple. I did heat emboss the Merry Christmas sentiment down at the bottom, and that's from a Lawn Fawn set, so I will make sure I link that at the bottom. But it is just a quick little easy strip, and I'm going to put this strip at the bottom of this card, and then we're going to do sequins as our embellishments instead of the others. So still gives it a different look. So I'm just going to add some sequins to this and glue on my sentiment, and then I'm going to show you all the cards so you can have a quick review of all the things that we've worked on, get you some inspiration for your holiday card making. I hope that you enjoyed this video, and I just want to say a quick thank you to everyone who has subscribed to this channel. It makes such a difference in my life, helps me to try to keep going with this YouTube and with my crafty dreams. So thank you so much for doing that. Make sure, if you want to keep supporting me, that you are subscribed, that you go through links in the description when you need to go shopping. All those things help me, and I would love to see pictures of your cards. Please find me on Instagram at Nikki Hearts Cards, and let's share cards. I want to see what you're doing out there. All right, don't forget the giveaway, and I hope to see you guys again soon on the channel. Have a great day. Bye.